I'll give you a couple along the way. I think one of the first basketball games that Meek ever came to, the Sixers, the team was going through a rebuilding process. We were, I think we were 10-72 that year, and I think we were having more fun at halftime than what was actually happening on the court. It was, it was a tough process to go through. And I remember we were, I don't know, it was probably 2014 or something. We were at this game, and I said to Meek after it, I said, "Hey, I'm going to the Borgata. It's a casino in Atlantic City. Do you want to come?" He says, "I'm not allowed." And I literally looked at him. I said, "Do you need permission from your mom?" And he's like, he looked at me. He's like, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm not allowed to go." I'm like, I didn't understand. I was like, he's like, "I'm on probation." I'm like, "Okay, so you can't go across the bridge to go to the casino?" He says, "No, I'll go to jail." And I was like, that was the first time he told me that. I was like,
he mind blown and I'm mind blown. Like my rich white friend don't even think this possible. And and me, you could walk from here 3 blocks. He's like, if you cross that bridge, you go to prison. I'm like, yes. I'll probably get 3-4 years in prison. And it baffled me how surprised he was. And as I just met more people who cared about this situation, it was like, it's not normal, Meek. And we started building. We came up with a plan. I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to cry a victim. Of course, I come from an environment where it's a tough environment. It's a ruthless environment. I think you people know the inner cities of America where poverty is like a big deal. And I never been an angel, and coming out of that, meeting Michael Rubin and just people along the way, I figured out this wasn't normal. And
what was normal for you, it didn't seem normal to me. So that was the first thing I saw, was that. And I remember saying, so wait a second, because I said, doesn't your son live in New Jersey? He said, yeah. I said, so how do you go see him? He said, I have to get permission. I'm like, wait a second, if you want to go pick your son up from school, you have to get permission. He's like, yeah, I'll go to jail if not. And he's telling me like it's normal. I'm looking at me like he's got 7 heads. Literally, it made absolutely no sense to me. So that was probably the first time. The second time was, this is going back again, 5-6 years ago. Now, Meek was around all the time. Before the summer, before he was convicted in 2000 and before he was sent to prison for not committing a crime, he was around all the time. And I kind of like, I'm like a banter or make fun of people. I'm like, yo, dude, like, why are you always here? He's like, I'm like, do you need a job with the Sixers? Do you want to work at Fanatics? He's like, Michael, I'm not allowed to travel. What do you not understand? He's frustrated because he can't make money. And I'm like, I don't understand why it's just not making any sense to me. So the next thing happened, when I watched him, I watched a probation officer get up and say he's a model probationer. He's done everything we've asked. We recommend no sentence. I watched a district attorney get up and say we recommend no sentence. And he was there's a judge who says because he popped a wheelie and broke up a fight in an airport, even though there were no charges in either case. I watched her send him to prison for 2 to 4 years. That was like the major wake-up call for me. I'm like, now this guy had become a really good friend of mine. I'm like, it was like I'd never seen something so wrong in my entire life. And it was firsthand. It wasn't like Meek telling me about his cousin or his friend. This happened to my boy. And so that was the second thing that really like shocked me. And that was, for me, that was really the life-changing event where, I think myself and Jay-Z said, look, we're going to do whatever it takes to get you out of prison. And then the third kind of, and probably the last thing that really shocked me was we were very focused on this judge, and we hired a bunch of investigators. They were looking at all her previous cases. We found tons of improprieties, tons of issues, and I remember I went to see Meek. I probably saw Meek when he was in prison. I don't know, probably 20 times. And one time he said to me, Michael, like I know you're so obsessed with like this judge because you saw it firsthand. He said, I never did the original crime. He said to me, you've got to like get the original gun. You're gonna see like, yeah, I had a gun, like every kid in Philly has a gun, but I was just kind of, I was just getting rid of it. And so our investigative team, Luke, who's sitting right in the front seat here, I left the prison that Saturday. I called Luke. I said, Luke, you got to look at the original. You got to look at the original arrest. Meek, he tells me he didn't point the gun. And by the way, it makes sense because if he pointed the gun, he probably wouldn't be here. Like Meek always said to me, it's called suicide. If a black kid points a gun at multiple police officers,
I just always break it down as like I'm an artist. I've been in business. Rap careers last 5 years. I've been around like 8-9 years. I come from a bad environment, but I don't make suicidal decisions. I never wanted to kill myself. I know if you point a gun at a police officer, it's probably like a 99.9% chance
Because they'd be doing their job.
Yeah, you're supposed to do your job. And I always used to say to Mike, probably every 6 months, we'd just be chilling. I'm like, yo, you think I'm pointing a gun at a cop? It's just out of character. I wanted them to know me as a person. And he always would be like, nah, I don't think you did it. But he used to breeze over it, and I didn't think he really understood what I was saying. And
because I didn't really think about it. But so once so then our investigators went out, and the first police officer we interviewed said, oh no, he didn't point the gun. The whole thing's a lie. And now I'm at the Super Bowl in 2018. Eagles playing the Patriots. And literally, I remember calling Meek. I said, I got great news. You're getting out of prison right away. One of the cops came forward and signed an affidavit, said you didn't point the gun. And there were only 2 arresting officers. This was one of the 2 arresting officers. And Meek's like, that's amazing. It took another 3 months for him to get out of prison.
I even told him that, too. I was like, it's amazing. He thought I was coming home, like, tomorrow. I'm like, no, the system don't work.
I'm like, I'm coming home from the Super Bowl to pick you up. You're coming home. And he's like, okay. And
this is in February. I seen him in April.
April 24th. So for me, watching that, even though he didn't do the original crime, and that he went to prison 4 different times over the next 10 years for never committing a crime, but he was still in prison, that's when we said this issue is so much bigger than him, and that's when we said we need to take on the issue. In our conversations, we would talk every day from prison. The conversations went from, how are we getting him out of prison, to once we get him out of prison, how are we fixing the overall issue? I think that's where the entrepreneurial business instincts kick in and say, we got to fix this problem.
Well, I want to start with that because, Meek, your case seems so extraordinary. You had such a punitive judge and a cop that, ended up on a list of police officers that weren't allowed to testify because they were considered so corrupt. Yeah. But how do you, as you're creating the Reform Alliance, make sure that people aren't so focused on the details of your case that they lose sight that this is not about one judge and one cop, but this is about a system?
I would say from the work we putting in behind the scenes, we hired a team. We got a team of people. We built a foundation. We got Robert Kraft, Michael Rubin, Clara Sy, Mike Novogratz, Robert Smith, Jay-Z, myself. And, we built a super team of people who actually can put in the work. Of course, it's going to take time. Michael Rubin, his number was 1 million people, freeing 1 million people out of the system, talking parole and probation also. We just came up with a bold number, and we got to put in the work nonstop.
But I think honestly, that's taking a business approach toward a non-business issue, because when we started this, we said, look, first thing, in my old company that eBay bought, one of the big mistakes I made was we did too many things not well enough. I said, we want to focus on doing one thing and one thing only here. So we want to focus only on probation and parole. By the way, there's 6.7 million people in the system in America. 4.5 million are on probation and parole, and no one had been focused on probation and parole in a significant way prior to us starting the Reform Alliance. So the first thing was, let's figure out an area where we can be highly focused. This is what had previously affected Meek's life, so he had this great first-hand experience. We learned so much about it, so we wanted to focus on that. The second thing was, come up with a bold goal. People are like, hey, you should try to get 10,000 people. I'm like, screw that. We're getting 1 million people out of the system, because that's what you do in business. You come up with a bold goal and you go after it. And then we want to set this up the same way we'd set up a company. We got the best people involved to start this with. We started with over $50 million in funding from myself, Meek, all the other people that Meek mentioned. We have this super, we couldn't have a better founding group of partners. So we started with $50 million. We hired Van Jones, this incredible team, solely focused on probation and parole, want to get 1 million people out of the system, and we're running this like a business. And that, I think, is why we're going to get great results, because we're going to do whatever it takes to be successful. We're going to work together with people on both sides of the aisle from a political perspective.
I want to go back to what you said about about having that discipline to focus on probation and parole, because the criminal justice system is so